today to our career ministry lunch and learn. We have Jay Litton, who has been running the career ministry at Roswell United Methodist Church for 25 years, which is amazing. And when we first set out to start this ministry, that was definitely the model that I looked at. I didn't ever think we would get that big. Still don't, but anyway, that was the one I had seen in Georgia, and I thought it was just such a blessing to the community, and wanted to propose that to our pastor here, and that's how it got started. So we're really excited to have him. He's got a great sales background and lots of knowledge as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to him in just 1 minute. But I will say, if you guys want to share in the chat your LinkedIn profiles, you're welcome to do that. You may have others on the call that you might want to connect with, and you never know who might have a connection for you as well. So we're here to support each other. Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. In just a moment, I'll have you, first of all, did you get the slides?
I did, and I will definitely share those, yes.
So while we get started on that, so first of all, thanks, really to Tracy. I mean, if you think of how it is very satisfying being a volunteer in a job networking ministry and feeling like you're doing the right thing, because it is so rewarding. As a matter of fact, although we do this under the church umbrella, it's kind of interesting whether I'm speaking to somebody who is a non-believer or somebody who's of a completely different faith. Nobody can argue helping people get work is not a good thing. So it's a really easy way to bring people together. And Tracy, just thank you and your church for making this happen. So yeah, I started back in 1997 as being a volunteer. And after about a couple of years, all the volunteers kind of gave up, and I just kind of kept it going and decided, since I had full control, that I would just kind of come up with some new ideas. And it's real exciting to be able to help people get jobs. We've, in the last 25 years, had about 90,000. Now, if you came twice, I'm counting you twice. But we've had 90,000 people come on site at our ministry over the last 25 years. And it's something that's really a lot of fun, but I have a whole team of people that help me so I can continue to do my day job, which coincidentally, I'm in all of your shoes right now because I'm in between jobs. I was laid off about 6 or 7 weeks ago, where a company went from 250 employees down to 30. So it was really, even though they had lots of money, the investors were unhappy with the direction of the leadership, so they made changes. So I know exactly what you're going through, and I think that's one reason God puts me in job search mode every few years, is to keep my empathy at a very high level. So with that said, what got me started in 1997 was what this is all about, and that is I was looking for a new job. And so, Tracy, if you go ahead and advance the slide there.
And can you all see the slide? Or is it like showing all of the previews of the others?
It's both. It looks good.
Okay. Is it fine?
Yep.
Okay.
Good. So this is going to be very interactive. We don't have such a big group that I can't do that. So let me just, turn your microphones on if you don't mind to help me answer this question. But when you're at the end of an interview, whether it's on Zoom or Teams or whether it's face-to-face, and you're in front of the hiring manager, what are they saying at the very end of the interview typically? Anybody? Anybody want to give it a whirl?
The spoils that I always enjoyed was, I think we're interested in hiring you. That's a delight to hear that.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm hearing Michelle saying that maybe they're overqualified. There's a lot of different reactions. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Well, if you advance the slide, I'll share with you what I hear from people. People like yourself. We'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the number one thing that people hear, because the hiring manager is going to be interviewing a lot of different people, and they don't want to overcommit just after a first meeting with you, because they're just unsure. They're unsure, and they don't want to obligate themselves. But there's another reason for it too. I call this the wow interview. And I believe it's because they were not wowed. Now, when I heard from Stan just a moment, he goes, yeah, they want to hire him. Obviously, you did something to wow him, Stan, when you did that. So that's phenomenal to you. But Tracy, go ahead and advance. What we've learned over these years is that a hiring manager, now this is from research data from outplacement companies, they will interview on average 8 candidates. So let's say 12% of the time you have a chance of winning the job offer because you're one of those 8 candidates that a hiring manager will interview. Now keep in mind, if they're going through recruiters and other people first, I'm not counting that. I'm counting just the 8 people that are in front of a hiring manager. Sometimes it's 3 or 4, sometimes it can be 10 or 12. And when you think about the fact that you have a 12% success rate, that can be a little demoralizing a little bit because you'd like to think that you could do a little better than that. So as we kind of talked about on getting this program started, Tracy, if you advance the slide, what I'm trying to do is help you with a 46% success rate. So just imagine for a moment that you knew walking into an interview that you had almost a 50% chance of success of getting the job offer from the hiring manager. Oh my gosh, the amount of confidence that you would have going into that interview would skyrocket. And also that confidence would be portrayed, not being egotistical in front of the hiring manager, but one of like, I can get this job done. And from a hiring manager perspective, if you are able to exhibit that in a very meaningful way, hopefully they're going to say things like, wow, we'd like to hire you. But these numbers this 46% comes from about 20 years ago when I interviewed and stayed on top of about 100 candidates and went through a workshop that I did. And when I say stayed on top of their activity, I mean, it sometimes was about a 4 or 5 month span that I tracked 100 different people. And just because somebody attends this workshop or attends some other workshop that I've done doesn't mean they're going to deploy what I recommend. I leave that up to you. But if you do it, you have a 50% success rate almost instead of the 12% rate that we talked about a moment ago. All right, Tracy? So for today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you what's the secret behind the WOW interview to help you generate job offers. Number 2, I'd like to share with you how you can do it safely. And what I mean by that is there's this thing called the rule of thirds that is done in every interview today. And I'd like to show you how you can control the outcome a little bit better using what's currently done today instead of something that's kind of out there. And then I mentioned confidence a moment ago. I want to give you some renewed confidence so that your next face-to-face meeting with the hiring manager, face-to-face these days could mean virtual, but your next face-to-face with them is one of success and get you that 46.6% success rate. All right. So I go back to 1997 because that's where I was in my job search, in between jobs, and I wanted to differentiate myself, but I didn't know how. Now, if you really think about that for a moment, everybody wants to differentiate themselves, but at the same time, you want to learn about the job too. So how do you differentiate and learn at the same time? I was kind of conflicted on. So I came up with this strategy, and I'll just put it this way. The very first time that I delivered this, the hiring manager looked at me in the face at the end of the interview and said, wow, that is impressive. And 2 days later, he contacted me after he'd flown back to his office in California. This was a meeting in Atlanta. And he offered me $20,000 more base pay than we talked about on the interview. I actually turned that job down because I didn't think it was the perfect fit for me. But about 2 weeks later, I had the opportunity to interview with another company through a recruiter. And I had the face-to-face opportunity of interviewing with this hiring manager. And I thought, you know what? The thing that I did that first interview 10 days ago or so, I'd like to redo that. So I did. The first interview with the hiring manager, he goes, wow, that is impressive. Exactly the same words that were spoken the first time. And then the second interview, believe it or not, was in Germany. I had to be at a trade show in Germany for my company. they were exhibiting at that same show. So we agreed to meet in Germany at this trade show. And when I walked into their booth for the interview prior to the show opening up, the top VP of the company literally put his arms around me and walked with me. He says, "Here, let's go in this corner over here so we can talk." And he said, "Jay, everybody here wants to hire you. I just want to have a chance to meet with you." And I got that offer. And I was there at that company for 5 years. I actually moved into management a short time later. And that was success that I had in early '97. So when I heard that my church was looking for people to volunteer at the end of '97 for being part of this job networking ministry at Roswell United Methodist Church, I thought, well, maybe I could teach this to other people. And that's what you're getting the beneficiary of being 25 years of me teaching this. So, all right, Tracy. So, there's a lot of ways to get the hiring manager excited about you and say, wow, this is a cartoon that I purchased the rights to share with you. And basically you have a job seeker talking to his wife, explaining his situation. So go ahead, next slide. I typed up on my resume on the computer, the spell checker accidentally changed Mid-State Junior College to Harvard. So, there's all different types of ways to getting attention. I don't recommend that one, but obviously some people do use their resume incorrectly, and I don't recommend that at all. But we're all trying to get employed. We're all trying to get our jobs. All right, Tracy. And by the way, thanks for everybody letting me kind of point to Tracy to advance the slides, because I was unable to get them properly loaded for this Teams thing. So thank you, Tracy. So let me ask this question to the group, and if you want to, just give me a thumbs up or something if you don't want to go off mute. But would you consider a job interview a sales call? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I see one. Anybody else? I see some thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Absolutely. So one of the things I bring to the table on this meeting is that I've been in sales since I graduated from college. And most people who teach interviewing come from an HR background, or they come from a recruiting background, and they deliver a lot of expertise in that area. The contribution I bring is I come from the sales side. So definitely listen to everything that they say. But when it comes to trying to close the deal, I believe you need to pretend for this 1-hour meeting with the hiring manager that you are a professional job seeker. A professional job seeker means taking on professional traits from many different disciplines, and one of them is the sales side. So I believe that the interview with the hiring manager is definitely one where you're making a sales call, and you need to conduct yourself that way. Now, you may not be interested in being a professional salesperson, and that's okay. But just for that 1 hour, we need to think of some things that professional salespeople do, and that's what we're going to kind of uncover today. So the number one secret of the WOW interview, go ahead, drum roll, is something called PPQ. Now, if you have a pen, it's a great time to just kind of go from pen to paper on this one, or on your computer or whatever, as we go through this, because this is the fundamental reason why hiring managers will say wow to you at the end of the interview. Now, after we go through PPQ, I'm going to discuss with you the rules of thirds. I'm going to discuss with you how to deliver a wow in a way that works for everybody. But we got to know the principles first. And the first P of PPQ, go ahead, means that you're the most prepared candidate. Now, there's a lot of folks that prepare, but they don't know if they prepared enough. Most of the time, if you go on Google and you search on what do I need to be prepared for on an interview, you're going to find some very generic items that really don't do anything to help you. They just say be prepared, almost. Maybe learn more about the company, things like that. Just very, very minor stuff. But if you're going to be a professional salesperson for 1 hour, you need to be very prepared when you walk in. You don't want to wing it. And unfortunately, that's what typically is done. So if you advance the slide, Tracy, there's a difference between being prepared and being the most prepared. The most prepared means, for me as a job seeker, that I'm going to be more prepared than anybody else would possibly be of those 7 other candidates that I'm competing with. Now, we don't really know how well prepared we are compared to these other 7 people, but we need to be prepared more than we think that they would be. And that's kind of the benchmark that we have to use. And if you'll advance, Tracy, I'd like to share this with everybody. Preparation leads to magic. There's a world famous photographer. His name is Steve Uzel. He goes on the speaking circuit. He was with National Geographic magazine for 25 plus years when I met him about 10 years ago. And he's got photographs that literally took hours for him to wait on. In other words, he gets his tripod, he gets all his camera gear, he leaves wherever location he's at 2 a.m. in the morning, and he's setting up at 4 a.m. in the morning at this one, at this remote location. This is one photo I'm thinking about. When he's snapping the photographs, sometimes it's not till 6:30 or 7 a.m. when the sun's coming up in the right way. And all it is that nobody else could have taken that photo but him, because of the preparation in getting to that one spot at that right time with the sun coming up, with all the other elements of that photo. So your preparation, I'm trying to sell you on the fact of being more prepared than what you normally have been. And just for inspiration, I encourage you to go to that website, steveuzel.com, and you'll see what I mean. The second P stands for being the most passionate candidate. Now, it's possible for you to be very prepared and not very passionate. And if that's the case, you're probably not going to wow the hiring manager. It's also possible that you can be not very well prepared and be extremely passionate. And if that's the case, that's not going to get you a wow either, because you're going to come across like disingenuous. It's not going to be real. So it's the combination of being the most prepared candidate and the most passionate candidate that puts you in position to be able to wow the hiring manager. And that takes us to the Q. And that means qualified. Notice I didn't say most qualified, because the most qualified candidate does not always win. I'm sure you've been in situations where you're competing with an internal candidate and you're more qualified than possibly they are, but they have some emotional traits that are allowing them to be elevated inside that company to the job that you want. Being the most qualified doesn't matter, but you just need to be qualified to do the job. Or if I didn't see too many people, young in their career here, like 22 or 23 years old coming out of college. However, if that's the case for somebody well, they may not be qualified, but is the company willing to call them qualified based on, whatever experience they had previously, because they're willing to train them. So are they trainable? So when I speak to folks at that age group, are you trainable? Is the company willing to be trained, make you trainable as well? So PPQ is what it's all about. And this is when I speak and people ask me questions about the WOW interview, sometimes I'll hear, well, they hired somebody who was more qualified. And that's typically from a candidate that doesn't get the offer because they did not wow the hiring manager. It's not really about the other person. It's more about, did you wow the candidate? Did you wow the hiring manager or not? That is so much the reason why we don't get hired. Now I've heard from everybody on this one. I've heard reasons why it's okay skipping being PPQ. So I just want to go ahead and let the air, or what do they say? Talk about the elephant in the room. Because some of the things I'm going to share with you is going to take a little time and effort. So number one, the WOW interview probably takes too much effort. And it does take a little bit of effort. Number two, I'm not even sure I want the job. Well, I'm busy and I don't have enough time to devote to that interview as far as getting prepared for it. I don't even know enough about the job yet. Why would I work hard on something I don't even know if I want? And I'm just not comfortable, or I'm uncomfortable doing anything different. So I'm giving you the excuses ahead of time as to why you don't want to wow somebody. But I think the value of doing the wow far surpasses any discomfort you may have and turns that discomfort into confidence. So let's go ahead and move. Let me just stop and pause for a moment. Are there any questions so far? Because I'm going to get ready to go into the next section. Okay, good deal. Feel free to interrupt at any time, though. I'm good with that. So let's talk about what happens during the typical interview today. The first thing that happens is the hiring manager asks you the questions. Sometimes they'll say, do you have any questions at the very beginning? But don't take the bait. It's really not about them relinquishing their control. It's more about that's just one of their interviewing questions. And they want to, after you through answering or giving a couple questions, they want to go back into that mode. So the first section is all about the hiring manager having control and asking you the questions. The second section is about the hiring manager telling you about the job. And this is where it's almost a courtesy to you, even if you didn't handle the questions very well, it's almost a courtesy to you for, coming in, spending the time, learning about the job, learning about the company. They're willing to share a little bit of that with you. And then the last section is the hiring manager asking you if you have any questions. So this is what I've identified as the rule of thirds, and it's pretty prevalent, at least in the United States, for most interviews. There could be some exceptions, but I think we're pretty guaranteed about 95% of the time, this is the way it's going to be done. So when we talk about doing something different, like for the WOW interview, I want you to know we're going to do this within these three sections. We're not going to deviate from the traditional interview to reduce your risk of doing something weird. So, all right. Thank you, Tracy. So when we talk about the first third, when they're asking you questions, have you ever been face to face with somebody and you can't tell if they're really listening to you or not? They have this glazed look over their face. Well, if that's the case, you're simply not grabbing their attention. The questions maybe you're answering during that first third of the interview are not compelling. They're not what they're looking for. If anything, this hiring manager is ready for you to be done so they could ask their next question and see if that one's any better. So let's kind of walk through what that means for a job seeker and how you can be PPQ for the first third of your interview. So what I like to do is I like to tell, I call them mini wow stories. They're not answers to questions. They're actually little mini stories on something that you've done that is relevant to the question that was asked. Go ahead, Tracy. And so we're going to follow this format. And if you've had any professional outplacement company help, there's other formats that they follow too. I'm going to kind of change the rules a little bit and add some original ideas here. But whether it's the STAR format or the PAR format, the SOAR format, there's a lot of different formats on how you should answer questions. I'm going to give it to you differently in a story format. The first part of the response to the hiring manager should be answering in a story format that starts with what the situation was, what the challenge was, what the problem was. And this all pertains to something you've done in your past that generated some success. So for example, somebody may say, tell me about yourself. You may say, well, that I'm a very creative person. I'm picking that up from, let's see.
Paul.
I guess it was Paul. Yeah, Paul's a creative guy. And Paul, if it helps you any, my second job out of college, I sold typesetting equipment. So I know typesetting really well before it became desktop publishing. But anyway, let's say you're very creative like Paul. Paul would have a wow story for being creative. Maybe Paul's also very detailed. Paul would have a wow story for being very detailed. So when they ask you the typical questions like, tell me about yourself, Paul could say, well, I'm a very creative person. An example of that, and that's where the wow story comes in, the mini wow story comes in. He could say, there was a situation at my former employer where we had an ad campaign and it needed to be jazzed up because the other campaigns were not working. We were actually losing revenue at our company. Now I'm going to the W or the O, the original action. What was the action I took? So I created a new ad campaign that created a new mascot for the company. And the W, the windup is, because we created this mascot, it became the dominant theme at all of our campaigns over the next 18 months. And our revenues actually increased by over 8% over that period of time, generating hundreds of thousands of additional dollars for the company. I'm very proud of the creativity that I put into that effort. Now, isn't that a lot better than just saying I'm creative? Or saying I'm creative and let me show you my portfolio? It's answering the question within a short time frame, but saying it in a way that's compelling. Now, I just completely made that up on the fly for Paul. So if I can make that up on the fly for Paul, hopefully you can do something similar. But I recommend that you have a wow story. I recommend you have a mini wow story for all your key attributes. And if creativity is one of them, maybe have 2 wow stories for that. If being detailed is part of who you are, then maybe have 2 wow stories for that as well. If I were to sum it all up, I would let you know that I believe you should have somewhere around 7 wow stories in writing, kind of memorized a little bit, so that you can off the cuff really make this successful for you. So Tracy, turn to the next slide if you will. I think,
Need this one?
yeah, I'm sorry, let's just go on back. Go back to the, yep, there we go. What I really encourage you to do is role play these with a friend, a spouse, a family member, whatever. So after you've listed the 7 wow stories in writing, the last time I did that for myself, by the way, it took me about 2 hours. And what did I use as my template? I used my resume for ideas. My resume actually had a lot of these mini wow stories, but they were in the resume format instead of a wow story format. And so I encourage you to use that for inspiration. And then the other thing I want to emphasize on doing a role play is try to keep it within 30 or 40 seconds in length. The hiring manager's not looking, we're trying to avoid that glazed look that you saw a moment ago. And the hiring manager's not looking for a 5-minute story. I tell you what really happens though that makes this kind of fun. If you do the wow stories successfully, I mean, the hiring manager is going to be very curious about the original action you did. So for example, if I was hiring a graphic designer and he told me that he increased the revenues of the company by hundreds of thousands of dollars by creating this mascot, I'd say, man, do you have that mascot with you? I mean, do you have that in your resume book or your portfolio or anything? Is there a way I could look at that? That sounds pretty exciting. So anytime you generate a successful mini wow story, I need to let you know that it's going to create curiosity, and curiosity will drive the conversation further. So instead of a 30 or 45-second answer to a question with a mini wow story, it many times could turn into 3, 4. I've seen 10-minute conversations take place because of one mini wow story. So before we move on to the next section, the third section, anybody have any questions about the mini wow stories and some of the guidelines that I kind of shared with you? All right, if not, we will move forward. All right. So this third section, the second section I kind of skipped over because there's really nothing for you to do but listen to what the hiring manager has to say about the company. You can engage with the hiring manager on that. But when we get to the third section, we need to think about something for a moment. When the hiring manager's through with their questions, the interview on that first section, the interview for all intensive purposes is finished. The hiring manager asked their questions, they're done. The second section is really for you as a courtesy, as I mentioned earlier. And the third section, where they ask you if you have any questions, that's really a courtesy to you too. Although some hiring managers will use that as a way to continue to filter the meeting. Doesn't mean you've wowed them. There's probably no question you could ask that would just simply wow them. So how can we use this third section to our advantage? And what I'd like to do for you today is share with you how I would do it. So if you'll turn to the next slide, I'd like to do a role play with you. And this time I'm going to do it live. So I created this hard copy. It's called the WOW Discussion Guide. And I know it's a little reflective, so let me get that off of there. So it's a WOW Discussion Guide. And on here, this is what I use to kind of present the WOW to groups of folks. I'm interviewing as a customer representative, service representative, and I'm going to be interviewing with this guy named Patrick. And Patrick is the manager of a company called Mortgage Financial. And on this, I just simply have his name and my name. No big deal. So what I'd like to do in introducing this, I'm going to go through a real role play, and I'm not going to instruct you. I'm just going to show you how I would deliver this. Fair enough? So let's go. So first of all, let me set the stage. I'm probably sitting across a table if we're face-to-face. If we're not face-to-face, obviously we're virtual. I don't have the ability to control that, but let's go for the hardest situation, which is I'm face-to-face. And Patrick is who I'm interviewing with, and Patrick says, Jay, do you have any questions? I would answer it by saying the following, and I'm going to go into role play mode right now. Well, Patrick, instead of asking questions, I've created something especially for our meeting today. Do you have a moment for me to share it with you? Patrick says yes. And then I'm either going across his desk or I'm asking for permission to sit on the side of his desk so we can walk through this document together. And I said, well, Patrick, thanks for taking the time. I took a moment to create this document to kind of cover some of the areas where I believe that I can contribute to the company. But first of all, what I'd like to do, I'd like to cover these three areas. And I know it gets a little blurry because I have, unfortunately, my screen kind of blurred. But Patrick, I'd like to review how Mortgage Financial is leveraged for success. Number two, I'd like to discuss three ways that I believe that I can make a positive impact in this role. And number three, I'd like to share with you my top career goals. Would it be okay if I went through these three items?
Sure.
Thank you. Well, first of all, in doing my research, Mortgage Financial is leveraged for success. You've got 23 years of history and experience. It's a $1.5 billion company. You're strong financially, and you have strong corporate structure and stability. The third thing I noticed is that you have numerous locations with continued plans for expansion, not only regionally, but also nationwide. And so from my vantage point, based on the research I did, you're poised for a lot of success moving forward. Would you agree, Patrick? Yep, Patrick's going to agree because I flattered him. So Patrick, one of the things I want to do is I wanted to take a little bit of risk here, because I don't know everything about this job that you have for me as customer service success representative, but I thought I'd kind of take some of the risk on my shoulders and share with you what I thought I could do if I was brought on board in this role. Number one, I'd like to continue to build on the customer satisfaction that you have by taking a lead role in reviewing the areas where customers might want higher levels of service. Number two, I'd like to determine which services might be lagging in sales and come up with a plan of action. I've done this before at other companies, and I think it would apply here as well. And number three, I'd like to model myself after your most successful representatives, but also take some of the ideas that we learn as representatives and share them with the marketing and sales organization so that we can improve our product and our delivery to our potential customers moving forward and our existing customers. Now, I took a little bit of risk on these three items. Are these three things that you're looking for in this role?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And then finally, I wanted to share with you my career checklist. Why I believe that this job matches so well with my career objectives is number one, I'm looking for a company that's financially strong and has a lot of growth and career upward mobility. Number two, I want to work for a company that has a proven track record of promoting those based on their performance. And number three, I want to work for a company that has a strong appetite for high levels of customer service and customer success. And Patrick, based on everything that I've researched about your company, the abilities that I have, and the checklist of things that I'm looking for, I want the opportunity to work here. All right, I'll close it there. I will say this, those seconds of silence at the end are intentional because that is the time there's this vacuum of air that needs to be filled. I want you to think of the uneven parallel bars in the like the Olympics. When in the gymnastics they do that dismount, and what do? They land on their feet, they raise their arms like this, and they're quiet and they're waiting for the applause. I want you to experience getting a wow. By the way, they don't always say wow. They may say nobody's ever done that before. I've heard personally, we'd like to hire you. We need to bring you on board. It is amazing what the reactions are when you wow hiring managers. So I'm going to pause there just for a moment, and I can give you a little bit more details into the construction of the wow discussion guide as probably the most dominant way for you to be PPQ on your next interview. But let me open it up for questions, and then I'll provide a little bit more content.
What questions do we have today? Anyone that has a question, or did Jay just do such a great job explaining that no one has any questions?
I guess.
Remember, in an interview, when someone asks for questions, you have to give them. So, okay, yeah. James.
Yeah, I have. I guess I don't know if it's a tangent or not. Hopefully, it's not too much of a tangent. But like, since I'm looking to jump into the actual industry that my degree is in, I'm basically looking at entry-level jobs. How does this apply? Because I don't know entirely exactly what job I'm looking at. I just want the industry, and so I can't say, oh, I know exactly what this job is about, and I can't start to do that amount of research unless I understand the detail level of the job, right?
So good question, and I'd love to give you the confidence to just plunge into it, because the risk of you not plunging into it is you're going to go on a lot of interviews for a long period of time, and I don't know about you, but it costs a lot of money to live today. And if you have any responsibilities at all, if you have a mortgage to pay, if you have rent to pay, I don't know about you, but it is too expensive not to try to wow hiring managers. But let me address your question head on. Back in 25 years ago, when I decided to share this with other people, because I did this for me, I didn't do this for other people. Think about it, salespeople make presentations all the time. I thought, well, I can just deliver a sales presentation. That's kind of what this is. But back in 1997, did you know that some companies didn't even have an internet website? I'm talking about big companies. The internet was only really started in 95 to any strong degree. People were using Netscape. It was a browser you had to pay for back then, right? So I had people say, Jay, how do I find out this information? Well, fast forward about 5 more years, I'm delivering the wow, And people are going, well, what website should I go to learn more? And boy, there's websites galore everywhere that give you information about your profession, your industry. And you know what? Welcome to 2023. In 2023, you have ChatGPT. And as a job seeker, if you're not using ChatGPT or you're unfamiliar with what I'm saying right now, oh my gosh, just put your confidence questions in ChatGPT or lack of confidence questions. Say, I'm looking for a role to be a customer service representative in the telco industry. What do I need to know? And then if it's over your head, you could say, you could prompt ChatGPT to say, bring it down to a 6th grade level so I can understand it. And it will completely give you all the information you want. Matter of fact, I think because of ChatGPT, and this is the first time I'm really commenting on it, it's made this WOW thing ridiculously easy. So what I think is that your confidence should skyrocket, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the ability with this WOW discussion guide to correlate from the preparation you did to getting a WOW interview. Previously, when you prepared for an interview, it did not correlate to wowing a hiring manager. I'm now giving you a hard copy document. Or the last time I did an interview for myself, I brought my iPad and I did it on my iPad. And then after the meeting was over with, I asked if he wanted a link. I did it in Google Slides, and I sent him a link with my Google Slides. And guess what happened? That Google Slide started, I made it so anybody who had access to that could read it. The whole company got to read it. So all of a sudden you become viral within your interview cluster of folks within that company. It's pretty cool. So I don't know if I'm answering your question well enough, but today with ChatGPT, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do all the research that you want very easily. Now keep in mind, read it, edit it, don't take it verbatim, but make it yourself. Is that helpful as an answer?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
We have
What
a
other
question
questions?
from Michelle on chat. She said, I struggle with confidence during the interview. Any suggestions?
And my confidence would be going back to the PPQ. So the cool thing, we all remember open book tests back in high school or college. We loved those, didn't we? So in a way, this is kind of an open book test for the interviews now, because if you're PPQ with your mini WOW stories, you've got them written down, ready to go, you're ready for almost any question that they're going to throw at you, because they could ask you just about any question and you'll find a way to take those 7 or 8 or whatever mini WOW stories you have and utilize them with one of the questions that they may ask you. So confidence is about being prepared, and you have the ability to know how to answer every question with mini WOW stories. Now, keep in mind, if they say, what kind of money are you looking for? And you've got a mini WOW story, don't take me literally on that, because just give them some kind of salary range or something. Don't tell them a story about it. But be prepared to have the mini WOW stories ready to go. The second thing that I would mention is at the very beginning of this presentation, I said item number 3 was to give you renewed confidence going into the meeting. So in addition to have the mini WOW stories, by physically having this, I make a copy for me. I actually take 3 copies in with every interview I had face-to-face, because usually there's a hiring manager that might be introduced to me without my knowledge, because they were so excited about this. So if you have this on your iPad or on your computer presenting it virtually, or whether you have it on your iPad presenting it in person, or you have this in writing presented in person, you are in great shape, because you're going to have so much confidence that you have this ready to go and ready to deliver. I hope that makes sense. It's all about what you did before the interview that gives you the confidence of that interview. Tracy, was there a question I missed on the chat?
Tracy, you're on mute.
I was muted because my phone was ringing. Sorry. Nothing else on the chat. Any other questions from people live? Okay.
Okay, perfect. So if you will, go to the next screen. So let's kind of do a quick review on this, and then I want to give you a little bit more information about how to put one of these together that I haven't shared with you yet. So the first section of the interview, I said, was for them asking you questions, but really what it is, it's many wow stories about your past that you come prepared for. You come prepared with many stories about your past. And then on the third section, yes, you want to be PPQ for the third section as well. My recommendation is to put something in writing like this to show what you could do for them if you were hired, to show them about how you understand their company, their industry, and most importantly, what you can do for them. Probably the most interesting thing about the third section that I really didn't dive into was, remember I was really quiet there at the end? That's because I asked a question to the hiring manager at the end. And that question was in the form of a statement. Now, let me rephrase that. My question was in the form of a statement, because what I did is I said, because they meet all these characteristics that I'm looking for in my job search, I want the opportunity to work here. And by saying it that way and then saying nothing after that, it causes the hiring manager to need to react to that. And that's where you're going to get the wow and that kind of thing. All right, go to the next slide, if you will. So my recommendation is you put the PPQ on the last third, put your preparation, your research, your ideas in writing, and present it. All right, Tracy? And then get feedback. That's exactly right. So let me share with you a little bit more content on this before we continue. And that is, I always get asked, well, Jay, can you send me the one that you used? And I don't want to do that, only because I want everybody to create this on their own. I don't want everybody to be saying, hey, I delivered a wow interview from Jay Litton. It needs to be your own, it needs to be for that specific job. So every one of these is typically crafted for that particular role, that particular industry, that particular company. So I typically will spend anywhere from I'd say maybe 5 or 6 hours preparing for a single interview. Now, a lot of people say, wow, that's a lot of time. And I go back to, well, how many interviews do you have scheduled this week? And they go, none or one. I go, well, do you want to just, I don't know about you, but applying online for jobs is not a lot of fun. I'd rather do really well at my next interview and get a job offer than worrying about how many jobs I've submitted for on LinkedIn. So, in putting this together, the first slide is that discussion guide slide where I just have the cover letter. Let me just give you the bullets. The second slide that I like to use that I did not use on this for sake of time, but when I'm doing it for me, is I call it the industry trends. I put 3 different industry trends in writing, and when I deliver to the hiring manager, I go, this is what I believe are the industry trends, and I list all 3 of them. The next slide that I deliver is something about the company and why they're leveraged for success. So I'm flattering them. They could be going through bankruptcy, but as long as they're still a viable company, there's got to be some ray of light that you can speak to. I had somebody interview at Delta Airlines about 20 years ago, and they were in bankruptcy 20 years ago. And they got the job because he felt like he was able to communicate with them why Delta Airlines was going to thrive, even during bankruptcy. Good news is they came out of that. The next slide that I like to talk about is, what are the top 3 things that you could do for them? Now, notice when I introduced that slide, I said I'm taking some risk here before I introduced it. And I'm doing that so I don't come across as egotistical or a know-it-all. I'm trying to come across very humble. And when I finished that slide, I said to Patrick, the hiring manager, did I get these right? Are these 3 things that you could use in this role? And Patrick, in the form of Tracy, said yes. So thank you, Tracy, for that. And then the last slide I had was what I could do, what my career checklist was, what I'm looking for, my career checklist. And I said, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this. And then I finalized it by saying, because this opportunity matches with my top 3 career goals, I want the opportunity to work here. And that's when I'm silent. And that's where this slide says get feedback. That's where you are looking for that feedback. Any question on the scripts or the format that I recommend? Anybody have any thoughts? Okay, I think I saw one message come through about ChatGPT. Yeah, you want to go to www.open.chat, G as in George, D as in David, T as in Tom, ChatGPT, or P, I said D. P. Oh, yeah. So GPT. And you want to register. Microsoft owns the company. Well, they're an investor in the company. I wouldn't call them the owner, but they're a big investor in the company. They have a brand new app that just came out too, but I usually use the web browser. Ask it any question. It's amazing. It's absolutely astounding what it can do for you. All right, next slide, Tracy. You know, I've asked for the job, and too many salespeople don't ask for the order, and they don't get orders because of that. So I'm asking you to be a professional salesperson just for a moment and ask for the job. You know what the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to offer you the job, and you're going to say no. But you know, I had one situation. I know we're wrapping up here in a moment, but I had one situation where I had an interview on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a following Monday with 3 different companies. When I delivered the wow for the first meeting, he offered me the job. Offered me the job during the first meeting with the hiring manager. And I said, well, I've got 2 more meetings coming up, one on Wednesday and one on Monday, and I worked hard to get those meetings. I'd like to have those 2 before I make a decision. Can I get back with you the following Tuesday? And he said, sure. On Wednesday, I interviewed another company. They offered me the job. On Thursday, the manager from the Monday meeting called me and offered me, he said, how'd your interview go yesterday on Wednesday? I go, actually, it went pretty well. I got the job offer. He goes, well, I'm calling you to let you know that we're going to offer you $7,500 more money bonus if you take our job. And then that Monday, I got another job offer. So I had 3 job offers within, 6 working days? And I ended up picking the very first one. I was there for 3.5 years. We got acquired by another company for a couple of years. It's like a 6-year experience, all because I wowed them with this, and I made more money in the meantime. All right, Tracy? So I like to throw a little humor in occasionally. And so it says here you're created in God's image. Very impressive. So I don't know, maybe you want to try that instead of the wow interview, but we're always looking forward to always getting it very impressive, and do what you have to do. All right. And Tracy, go ahead. So bottom line is I want hiring managers to realize that you're easy to hire because you reduce their risk in making a hiring decision. Go ahead, Tracy. And then finally, if you would ever know of anybody in Georgia that would like to want to attend our meetings, we meet on the 2nd and 4th Monday. We have a 6-hour meeting from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock every 2nd and 4th Monday, as I mentioned. We're on site. We have dinner. We have a clothing closet for interview attire. We have a photographer comes in, does LinkedIn photography for your headshots. There's a ton of workshops. It's worth it. If nothing else, just look at the agenda and register if you're ever in the area. But more importantly, I'm thinking about your friends that maybe are not in the Texas area. And then also crossroadscareer.org is for virtual resources that I would highly recommend you consider as well. And other than just telling you to just go wow some folks, that's what I had for you today. And I want to thank you for your time and attention.
Well, thank you, Jay. That was really great. We really appreciate that. Any last questions? We've got like 1 minute left. So, or just affirmations for Jay, anything that you'd like to say?
I'd just like to say thank you very, very much. That was so very, very helpful and much
Well, thank you.
appreciated. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, so we've had questions about the closing documents being shared, and he wants you to do it on your own. So if you need, I'm going to be uploading a copy of this presentation to our All Saints Career Ministry YouTube channel. So if you need to go back and re-listen to that part again, you may do that. But he wants that to be your slides.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, if you have questions, I don't think I put my email address on here. My email address is jay@littongroup.com, Litton group.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Feel free to LinkedIn with me. But if you have a question about anything we talked about today, I'd be glad to answer it. So thank you.
Yes, and our recordings are on our YouTube channel, which is accessed through the Career Ministry website, which is allsaintsdallas.org/career ministry. And then you go to connect, and our YouTube channel is there. And I will upload this presentation there as well. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful Wednesday.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Tracy.
Bye.
Thanks.